through posting and notification of the press in accordance with Wisconsin Statute 19.84. And first of all, thank you, Denise, for the little safety note. May is National Water Safety Month. So just a couple of key things, and I'll start by saying Greg is no swimmer. Greg is no swimmer because he didn't learn how to swim until he was much later in life. And unfortunately, at one point I was on a boat with my uncle out fishing, and the boat flipped over, and I was caught under the boat, which was fortunate, but really I didn't know how to swim. So I had something to hang on to, and so it wasn't a tragedy. So move fast forward, it's my kids will learn how to swim, and I still didn't know how to swim. It wasn't until I think my son was probably five-ish that I learned how to hopefully not drown, because that's about as good as it goes. So swimming is not a fun thing for me because I think back to being under the boat. That's what I think about. But so, and this first starts with learn to swim. So that's why I shared that. Um, One of the other things is providing close contact supervision or constant supervision. A couple of weeks ago, I met a gentleman at a gas station, and he talked about his 3-year-old that unfortunately went into the restroom with mom, and they didn't put the little water wing things on the arms immediately, ran out. She was cleaning up. He thought his daughter was with his wife. She falls in the pool, and unfortunately, she drowned. Wear a life jacket, even when you're comfortable doing whatever you're doing. Boating, even if you know how to swim, put on a life jacket. Read and obey all posted signs. That's a good one. Never swim alone or in unsupervised places. Look for lifeguards. Don't drink alcohol. Where's the other one? Note the weather. Clearly, with swimming and wind, can create waves if you're in rivers or ponds or things, and that's a different type of swimming in the first place. Sunscreen. Definitely use sunscreen. And I think that is all I will share. Anyone else with any safety share? Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, I would just say also with the weather, watch for storminess. Lightning does strike the water.
Yep, that's abrupt electricity, and electricity and water do not play well together. Anyone else? Okay, thanks. Is there a motion to adopt the May 16th, 2023 Finance, Buildings, and Grounds Committee agenda?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That passes unanimously. That was funny, Carl. Next is presentation of the fiscal 2022 year-to-date through April financial summaries. Mr. McCray.
Thank you, Commissioner Ardrey. Included in your board packet, as was referenced, are both the April the April revenue and expense summaries for all funds 10 through 80. Just maybe one point of interest, and again, I say this every meeting, right? Our financials are not particularly exciting simply because we have a schedule of how revenue falls, and we have pretty much a schedule in terms of how our expenses falls. We are on target right? Meaning, we are not, above budget, which is good for us. The one perhaps point of interest is our Fund 39. You will see that we still have a balance if you compare our revenues and expenses. And that balance will dissipate once the cash is moved as a result of the board's action to defease Fund 39 debt, right? So we'll see that as an expense when we place those dollars in escrow at Associated Bank. And that should happen yet this month of May. And then again, just as a reminder to the committee that that is a aid eligible expense. So we'll receive aid on that particular expense. That's pretty much the point of interest on our April financials.
Do you mind just sharing what is Fund 39?
Sure, no, great. So at least I didn't say an acronym. So Fund 39 is our debt service fund, and that's related to referendum approved debt. So there are really two debt issuances that we're paying off. One relates to the referendum approved debt in 2007. And then the other is the referendum approved debt of 2020. Just to kind of forecast a little bit, we should be debt-free by the end of the 25-26 fiscal year relative to referendum approved debt. We still have a non-referendum approved debt in Fund 38 that will continue on a little bit further.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Listen, I'm getting too short for this. 39, we have, according to this, 0.27%. It doesn't add up to 100, it's over. Is that interest?
Yeah, so typically we invest any receipts we receive from local taxpayers via the city or municipalities or county relative to debt. So we'll place that in, if you will, an interest-bearing account. It's not significant. You may recall last month we did a presentation kind of showing how interest rates have been positive for us over time, and that's good. Right? And when I say over time, if we were looking a year ago, we probably had interest rates of about 1% or 100 basis points. Right now, we're starting to see investments north of 400 or basis points or 4%. So we try to leverage that as best we can. Just a reminder, and thanks for the flashback commercial, we do work with the Wisconsin Investment Series Cooperative. They assist us in placing our large cash assets in interest-bearing accounts and or certificates of deposit that are FDIC insured.
One quick question yet. Is that usable only for what that original debt was for, or could it be used elsewhere?
You are correct in your first point. So any interest earned on debt is then to be applied to retiring the debt, right? So we can't, I mean, if you can use it, so I'll give you an example. With proceeds management relative to the $22.5 million debt issuance in 2020, right? The proceeds or the interest on that you can use only for that project, right? So you cannot use it for anything Fund 10 general operations related or Fund 27 special ed related. It's related to either the intent of the question or to retire the debt.
Thank you.
Certainly.
So, Commissioner Hannawell, I will try to remember to point out the things that might be new for you. But I say that to Commissioner Millard and Dahmershausen, and they help me remember that because we easily should remember what Fund 39 is, but I know that it might be a little, so I'll try to catch those things. Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, need a motion to move this to the full board for approval. Okay, any further discussion? All right, Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. That passes unanimously. So not directly as a part of the financial summaries, are we any closer with an overall dashboard?
Every day we're closer.
Just-
But no, it's a fair question, and actually I thought about bringing that up, but I did not, so thank you. Uh, we do want to get to that point. I think a lot of our energy has been working on the dashboard that our principals and district office administrators have access to. And then just really focusing on some other priorities such as preparing our own financial statements. So Matt Sylvester Knudsen is a certified public accountant, right? You may recall in the last audit report, right, that was removed, meaning we are preparing our own financial statements, so therefore there's not a conflict of interest of our auditor doing so, as well as performing the audit, right? So that's really where we've been channeling and just the daily operations more so. But it is a goal because, quite frankly, I think they're better today, but they're not really that data visualization that is just easier to consume. So we're not there yet.
Okay. What is this, May? So we got maybe 11 months for me to ask that for certain. Okay, our next item, update on referendum approved capital projects. Mr. Leader?
Commissioner Ardrey. I'll begin with our safe pathway projects. We are moving closer to completion. The bulk of the remaining work is related to the addition of the door release buttons at the main desk workstations. During one of our site visits, we met with staff when they returned back to school and asked them how things were going. And we noticed that we only had one door actuating button for 2 attendants. That's how it was scoped out. So we listened to their concerns, wanted to make sure that they had a good, comfortable working environment, and we decided to add a second switch so people wouldn't have to be moving around, right? Somebody who gets up to go to the restroom, that person would then have to slide over to release the door button. So we're working on those right now. It looks like we're gonna have a completion date of June 7th for the remainder of the door actuator buttons, additional ones. I have 3 doors that still need attention. I have 2 doors at Adams Elementary School. One arrived with the wrong glass. That's getting corrected, and that should be completed by the end of June. And we also had another door at Adams that was just incorrectly prepped. So it had the wrong door hardware. And I anticipate that to be replaced on the 12th of June. And the last door, third door, is at Parker High School, which is the break room door. That came with the wrong hardware group on it as well. That's going to take a little longer to resolve. We're expecting that hardware to be in on the 28th of August. So it's quite a back order on that. So other than that, I think we're moving forward pretty well, with the exception of the 4 things I just mentioned. So.
Just to add to Mr. Leader's report, we've included kind of a 2 document, or see if I can speak the King's English this evening. We provided 2 documents in the committee's packet, and these documents are generated by J.P. Cullen, and really listing the completed and outstanding punch list items. Right, and we share this just to really, we've always seemed to be at this high 90s% completion relative to our secure pathways. And some of it, as Mr. Leader noted, is having 1 switch between 2 workstations now being 2 switches, 1 at each workstation, right? And so again, Cullen's tracking some of this work, kind of punch list work, and you'll notice as you read through, like we have a lot of completed items, right? And so we are sharing this list with the principals, just to keep them in the loop, right? And just to really, that we're on top of it, because we do want to be 100% complete. And some of it continues to be supply chain issues, as Mr. Leader referenced.
Okay, moving on to fire alarm upgrades. The fire alarm upgrades for Adams, Washington, Roosevelt, Harrison, and Marshall are being scheduled for the summer of 2024. It's a lot of work to, especially when you're doing a complete fire alarm overhaul, that's a lot of work to cram into 2 months. So there's gonna have to be some really good, solid planning, and to make sure that we have all our devices in place prior to removal of the existing, so. The district building automation systems, we are in process of creating an RFP for installation costs district-wide. So that'll be going out probably in the next couple of weeks. Figure out what the cost is for that. And again, I anticipate this project take place in 2024 as well.
I'm just curious, when you talk about a fire, the fire system being overhauled, and you're doing that during the summer months, would there be summer school during that time in those schools?
That's a great question. No, there wouldn't.
Okay, because you wouldn't have an operatable system.
Exactly, and I'd have to post fire watches for that. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So one of the things I would like to put kind of out there is, as we approach the end of August, that might be a good time, as our buildings are nice and bright and shiny and all of the secure pathway stuff is completed, would be a great time to target our walkthroughs.
Agreed.
And I'm thinking, Mr. McCray, our committee, the acronym escapes me, but the financial committee, that we really vet it, that through. So if not before then, at least by then.
Sure, you're referencing the Community Financial Advisory Committee
Yes, yeah.
that assisted the board with the referendum?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And then as a committee, what we've done previously is had our building walkthroughs, and really just going through every building and having, whether it was Mr. Leader pointing things out in particular our buildings, or just a committee, just seeing whatever we saw kind of as novices, and then coming back and asking questions. So I'll look to, I mean, we don't need to do it now, but as we look toward the end of August, as I was saying, particularly when the buildings are ready for our staff and students to come back. Mr. Rader?
Could, I'd really like to include boilers, maybe a boiler room within that
absolutely.
walkthrough.
I was including that.
Oh, you were, okay.
Yeah, my mind was thinking all of the referendum
Oh,
work
sure,
I
sure.
said pathway, but
Okay.
I was thinking all of it.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, next, 1.9, update on federally funded elementary, secondary school emergency relief, also known as ESSER, capital projects. Ms. Carlson.
Good afternoon, Board Commissioners, colleagues, and public. My name is Tammy Carlson, and I'm the District Financial Analyst Grant Manager and ESSER 3 Program Manager. I've been asked to provide you an update on the current status of the School District of Janesville's federally funded elementary and secondary emergency relief, ESSER, capital projects. Our team takes very seriously our commitment to being appropriate stewards of taxpayer money. When developing the ESSER budget with stakeholder feedback, we mainly focused on projects and supports that would not create a fiscal cliff when the federal pandemic relief grant funding ends at the end of September 2024. We look to utilize a portion of the ESSER federal grant funds to address facility needs tied to the pandemic, while leveraging additional funding sources such as the board-approved Fund 46 Long-Term Capital Improvement Trust Fund, to coordinate with other facility projects to maximize construction efficiencies. Working closely with our construction management services team at J.P. Cullen and architectural and engineering design services team, Epstein Ewan Architects, EUA, we originally developed a rough order of magnitude budget of $10,195,555 of ESSER 3 funding to address grant allowable capital project needs for the district. Due to the size of the project and lead times for equipment, the first ESSER 3 funded project we addressed was providing equitable indoor air quality upgrades at Franklin Middle School to align with the other two middle schools in the district. Bid package 1 for equipment with longer procurement lead times was bid in December of 2022, and contracts have been completed by J.P. Cullen. Bid package 2 for the balance of the Franklin indoor air quality project, along with complementary non-ESSER funded Franklin projects, was bid out on April 25th, 2023, and J.P. Cullen is currently working on the contracts and additional steps needed for work packages that did not have initial bidders. Mike Johnson, J.P. Cullen's estimator, has been working closely with the district to make sure all required federal grant procurement notices are completed and utilizing inflation and estimating contingencies to keep us on budget currently in comparison to our initial estimates. On May 4th, 2023, representatives from the district, J.P. Cullen, and EUA did scope walkthroughs at Craig High School and Parker High School to obtain additional data needed to be able to provide more concrete estimates for the possible ESSER 3 Career and Technical Education, CTE, social distancing construction projects for the high school greenhouses and instructional kitchen spaces. When those updated estimates are available, we will review the updated expenses from bid package 1, bid package 2, the contractor general requirements, and additional contingency and fees, and review the project timeframe to see which ESSER 3 CT projects, if any, the district would be able to complete, looking at both funding available and timing before the ESSER 3 grant ends September 30th, 2024. Are there any questions?
The ESSER funds, as I understand, are done in 2024, correct?
Correct. ESSER 3 ends September 30th, 2024.
Yeah, I'm sure you've looked at this. Is there any possibility at this point that we're gonna have anything left over because we're not putting it somewhere?
You mean in the general ESSER budget?
Yeah.
No, we have plans for everything and contingencies if what we've planned for doesn't come to fruition.
Yeah, I get, that was the statement I was looking
Yes.
for. So if something that we're
Correct,
thinking doesn't fall through, we're not gonna say, oh, well, I guess we won't spend that money.
Correct, we have
Thank you.
plans
Yeah,
for everything.
that's what I
Yep.
was getting at.
Yep.
Might be appropriate, because I talked to Dave a little bit before the meeting. What could we use the ESSER funds for? And I think you heard me do it. I've got a couple of constituents out there that are telling me they can use it for this, this, and this. And that I'm all wet, that I don't know what I'm talking about, so I'd like to hear, could somebody just give a general idea what we were allowed to use ESSER funds for?
So ESSER funds are used to address the impact of the COVID pandemic on school districts. Each of the ESSER funding targeted a slightly different area of, like in ESSER 1 and Gear 1 were really to hit a lot of the personal protective face masks
Sure.
and really addressing the initial. The other ones are more to address learning loss, addressing indoor air quality upgrades. We can do social distancing, which is what we're using for the construction pieces. We're doing the indoor air quality upgrade at Franklin, and addressing the social distancing, meaning making larger spaces for students. The biggest impact is addressing learning loss for students, and ESSER 3 we're utilizing that with a lot of different areas, such as we are doing work with the AmeriCorps, which was presented. We are doing the upgrades to our curriculum at several different levels. We are doing work with the Boys and Girls Club. We've created a community school model at Wilson Elementary School. All of these things that we were doing is based on the different stakeholder feedback that we received. I don't know if you recall, right at the beginning of the pandemic, we did a survey of the public. We did meetings with different constituent groups to get feedback on what they saw as the needs addressed with the ESSER funding. We also very closely, as I said earlier, we very strongly did not want to create a fiscal cliff so that when the funding ended, that we would have added all of these supports that we couldn't then sustain. So our focus has really been on what can we do to address the needs. And everything is out on our district website. Under the community area, we are required by law to post the current budget for the ESSER 3 grant. And we have information on ESSER 1, Gear 1, and ESSER 2. ESSER 1 and Gear 1 are completely done. Those are done. Everything that is out on the website is what our final numbers were. ESSER 2 ends at the end of this, at September of 2023, but we will try to align it with our fiscal year and end ESSER 2 at the end of this current fiscal year, so June 30th. And then ESSER 3 will end in September 30th of 2024.
Okay, so that on our website, I can direct
Yep,
these
under the
people to
community
that.
area, there's a whole section about ESSER. And anytime that we do a budget update for the ESSER 3 budget, we are required to update that as
Okay.
well.
Get them off my back.
Yep, and
They
there
mean
is
what-
also.
No, these particular people are being
Yeah.
hard-nosed.
No, definitely. We also have a ESSER email address that I check once a week. At the beginning, I checked it every day, but nobody utilized it, so I now check it on Monday mornings when I get in the morning. That if anybody has any questions, they can definitely contact that email address, and we get back to them, like I said, now within a week.
Excellent.
So if they're definitely welcome to reach out, and if we find that people are starting to utilize it again, I'll obviously start checking it more frequently.
Just sick 'em on you. Thanks, Tammy.
Yes.
That was wonderful.
No, not a
Appreciate
problem.
it.
Yeah.
I'm sure the committee further understands the depth of ESSER 3 funding, even since its origination as ESSER 1, and then the governor's emergency relief fund, right? So Tammy goes into great detail, and that's awesome. I think it just speaks to the quality of work that she performs on a daily basis as the ESSER 3 program manager, and then the work that she's done with curriculum and instruction, or learning and innovation, as well as student services. So it's been very collaborative, very collegial, very detailed, and just really a good shout out, if you will, to Tammy for her work, as well as the work of other administrators here at the School District of Janesville to leverage the resources that we've been provided.
Okay. Thanks, Tammy. I just had a couple questions to make sure my hearing was what it should have been. I'm not necessarily processing things well today. So have we let the conditioned air project at Franklin yet? Or did I hear that we're getting estimate to cross everything before we say go do anything?
So we've purchased the equipment through the bid package 1 because the equipment for that project had such significant lead times that when we started working with the architects, we realized that we weren't going to be able to have enough time to get the project completed if we waited to put out the bids for those pieces of equipment. So bid package one was done back in December of 2022 to purchase those bigger ticket equipment, the chiller, some HVAC pieces. The bid package two is for the actual people who are working, so the different work packages that are happening this summer and next summer. So we are on target. They're finishing up contracts with them. We had a couple of bid packages that didn't have anyone bid for them. So JP Cullen is working to try to figure out how are we going to accommodate that? Is it something internal that the district will just, like one of them was painting. So is it something that internally somebody in the district is gonna paint? Or how do we find those? And so JP Cullen's working on those three that we didn't get bids for.
Okay, so I didn't quite hear it correctly. So for Franklin, this particular summer, there will be lots of activity focused on conditioned air.
Correct.
And that would be completed next summer, or would it be
Correct, next summer.
substantially completed this summer with a few little things left, or?
They've split the building into two sections. And so the north end, thank you. The north end will be done this summer and the south end will be done next summer.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, presentation of the 2023-24 District Athletic Participation Fees. Mr. McLaury.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Jim McLaury, I'm the District Athletic Director, and among the many things that we're looking at to increase participation and improve the quality of experiences for our kids and those who lead them, we often have to look at the financial part of things. And we're talking about a couple of opportunities today that we've been exploring the last several months, and they're broken down into really to two categories. One is athletic passes or access into events for our students and for our spectators. And then the second part is taking a look at our athletic participation fees, both for the high school and the middle school. So turning our attention to student athletic passes, we're first looking at our student athletic passes. This is access for our student body at our high schools to gain access as fans to their events at their schools. And just a little background information, we've had a price point set at $30 in the form of an activity pass that our students can purchase and attend any athletic event at their school. So it's been set at $30. Between our two high schools, this past year, only 116 students purchased this pass at this price point, and we haven't had much data to reflect a lot higher than that. So, of course, our interest is how do we, number one, how do we provide opportunities for our students to attend events at their facility, to be a spectator? How do we increase access to it? We try to identify the barriers, but really what we're finding for many of our events, even if a student doesn't buy a pass, many students still do show up and attend the event, but instead of buying a $30 pass for the whole year, they will pay the $3 when they get to the door. And so, again, we don't mind that students do that, but I think we like our students to think about purchasing a participation pass as a fan. So we are making a proposal, and there's a couple of things we're trying to do here. One is, as a conference, as the Big 8 conference, we are moving, and we've adopted a platform called GoFan. And maybe some of you remember last year we piloted for Janesville during the football season. We piloted a hometown ticketing platform, a digital ticketing platform, and we used that for our homecoming event as well as Craig, a homecoming dance. So we had an opportunity to see how it works. And so our conference has chosen get-go fan. We plan to use it universally throughout the conference, so the experience somebody would get at Janesville is the same experience they would get if a Janesville family went to Middleton and so forth. So we're using that platform. Another thing is, we have an emphasis on safety for all of our spectators, so we want to know the folks that are coming into our events, so digital ticketing allows us to do that as well. Digital ticketing also allows us to help give our students access who may not be able to afford the $20 fee or $30 fee. It allows us to comp tickets, but most importantly, we want all of our students to have access to a digital ticket, so when they check into an event, no one will ever know if $30 was paid, $20, and no dollars were paid. Everybody has the same type of interaction when they get into an event. Again, allows us also to know who's in our building, who's at our athletic facilities. So the digital ticketing platform allows us to do many different things. But we're suggesting actually to lower the fee down to $20 for students to have access to any home event. And we are moving to require all of our students to have a digital access or a digital pass of some sort, whether it's given to them because if they're in a free and reduced situation, so we can completely waive that fee, or it's something that they pay for. We want to get to a point where we have kids come to our facility. We know who they are because they have a digital ticket, so we can track in and out. So that is the student component. As far as what's the financial projection for that? Our most important projection is we want to be able to give more kids more access, and so we were going to do everything we can to promote the new platform of digital ticketing in the get-go when we start getting kids registered for school in July. So there's that piece. One piece I did not mention that's not in this is we have provided this past year an opportunity for our faculty and staff across our district to get access into games, and we're going to be planning to move toward that same thing where we would provide a digital ticket for our faculty to be able to do that. Again, we're trying to get everybody to move toward a digital platform. Okay, so that's that piece. The second or the third piece, really, but part of this presentation is we did a study on season passes that surrounding school districts provide. Yes,
Could
sir.
we break it up and let's talk about this first?
Yes, absolutely
Each piece
we
at a
can.
time
I would
a little
appreciate
bit.
that.
Yeah. So my first question is, as we look at our students attending, whether it's the student pass or just sales at the gate, do we have an approximation of how many students participate by sport or average, or?
I don't have that information available right now, but it's something I can provide pretty quickly.
So, and my thought was, I'm assuming the revenue is not a significant issue here. I understand the security standpoint of knowing who is coming in, so they would need to have a digital ticket. But I guess my thought is it worth to say, as a student, you get the opportunity to attend and here is your digital ticket, as opposed to, I'll say, a nominal fee of $20. Now, is it a far departure from the 30 that we were at? Yes. But is it the case of 20, I mean, if 30 was somewhat limiting and they would spend 20 may still be a bit limiting. But if we had no charge, is there a downside? I guess that's what I'm considering. Is there a downside that we didn't have a charge from the 10, and as a student, you get a digital ticket?
Yes, we've had that conversation, and I would agree that it's prudent for us to look at where are we between 0 and 30, and maybe it ends up being 0 in the final conversation. So this is our suggestion based on how we have operated and how we have utilized those funds. So that's where this conversation is. And as far as, I'm actually going to ask Mr. McCray if there's a specific question there, he might be better to serve to answer that. I think the question is, what's lost or what's gained by just charging nothing
That's-
from a dollars and cents standpoint.
That's fair.
Yeah, so how we capture obviously everything within our chart of accounts and general ledger. When we receive a gate admission packet, let's say on a Friday evening, that we then post as cash receipts on Monday, right, is there's a report in there that will disaggregate whether that's an adult ticket, a student ticket, so on and so forth. But when we look at the actual deposit in terms of gate receipts, we just do that in the aggregate when we plug it into our chart of accounts, right? So some of the work that needs to go back is saying, okay, let's disaggregate the data, right, in terms of the 291 source within the Wisconsin Uniform Financial record, right? So how do we break that down just to have a better understanding? I will pretty much go on a limb here, right? And I'm the guy who picks up a penny, right, to save a penny. So when we look at saying, okay, do we reduce the revenue, right? We are probably talking less than $15,000 in student gate receipts throughout the year, but we want to validate that number, right? Can we make that up somehow? I think to Jim's point, the greater good is having our students in gymnasiums and at football stadiums and track venues, if not participating, at least participating as a spectator in that positive environment. The other benefit is the more students we have going to games, the more concessions we sell. And why that doesn't necessarily come directly into the district's coffers, it does benefit our athletic booster programs, which then indirectly support our athletic program, right? So if there's a fiscal challenge that we're unable to meet outside of the core program cost, we do look to our boosters to support that. The more revenue our boosters have, the more they can work to enhance our program, which has a benefit for our student athletes.
So another question, when we start talking student athletic attendance fees, which sports actually are fees paid for?
Sure. So, yeah, thank you. So football, volleyball, boys and girls basketball, wrestling, hockey would be those situations. Soccer would also be another sport. And until we get to playoff time, we don't do that for baseball, softball. Track would be another one as well, actually. Track would be another one.
Okay.
We would do that for, yes. I think I have them all.
Volleyball?
Volleyball, yes.
Okay, swim?
Swim and diving, swim, yes.
Okay, ready?
What is the amount of money we take in for student attendance at all sports, and how does it affect our budget?
Yes, so I don't have that available right now, but I can have that available very quickly for you.
Okay, 'cause I went to school in Janesville, and we were never charged one penny. We just went. Now, I understand the digital ticket in this time. The question is, can we afford not to charge them, or if needed, how about a little $2 or $5 fee to get a digital ticket? That helps support the system more than the attendance. One ticket all year. If they lose it, they'll have to buy another one. Possibilities, I'm just looking at it, discussing it, because I don't want it to discourage children from going to their events, regardless of what the event is and that. So I never had to, and my children didn't, and that, I just find that a little bit troubling, so, thank you.
And not to speak for Jim here, I think that's essentially the intent, right, is to drive as many students at minimal or no cost to our athletic events. And we're throwing a lot of numbers at you, right, and I always appreciate the committee's patience. You know, we are under $4,000 in terms of annual student passes sold this year between both Craig and Parker. Right now, that's an annual pass. It's not the at the gate, cash transaction, right? But that's minimal, right? And that's why I'm comfortable saying, yes, we have students attending, but again, this is not a budget balancing revenue stream for us, right? But to Jim's point, right, we'll capture that, we'll disaggregate that data, because again, we're not tracking that within our chart of accounts between student and adult, but we do track between student and adult on the paperwork that's turned in for the aggregate cash receipt.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Greg, because I really feel the same. Every child should be able to go to a game. We're sitting at 50% of our children that have in poverty, and I don't want to discourage them. They're in less trouble at a game than they are on the streets. So I'd like to see that happen somehow if we can do it, and if the rest believe the same as I do. So, thank you.
116 purchased the $30 pass, correct?
Yes.
Now, did I understand you saying that you that you were looking at requiring all students to purchase a $20 pass then?
We're requiring all students to have a pass. And so
Okay.
we would treat it like we treat, anything in our district where there's a fee. If there's a student that has a financial barrier, we will of course waive that fee. But when we can provide the digital pass very easily without having to collect a fee from them.
Okay, and so the number would go from 116 to,
Again, that's a number that it's difficult to project. What we think we could do a much better job than we have of promoting this as an option for our kids, and particularly promoting it to their families, because this would save their families a few bucks as well. So that's hard to project.
Okay.
Again, what if 500 students total?
but it would
Yeah.
certainly
Yeah.
significantly increase from 116.
Of course, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Even if we said you're required to somewhere fall between whatever.
Yes.
On the thing, I understand. I'm gonna be the devil's,
The requirement would be for a digital ticket, not to have a pass.
oh, correct. I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here and say I may be agreeing with Carl a little bit in that I think I have trouble allowing people to go to anything for free, you know, especially when we're talking about athletic events. At the high school level, I've had 3 kids. I had myself and 5 other siblings back in the day where you could go for free. And I think during those days, there probably was more trouble because it didn't cost you anything. So I'm going to the game with Jim and Carl with no intent to watch the game, but I'm going down to Monterey for a while and hang out. I think as soon as you start allowing students to go to things for free, you're gonna have people there that don't have any interest really. I certainly understand, wanting to. I mean, I have grandkids now that are playing at Parker at least. I watch my kids, and I'm disappointed at watch. You go by Monterey Stadium or sometimes and you look and say, God, there's nobody there. Or where are the students? Where's the student support? I mean, it's parents and stuff, but you don't see the student sections. But I'm not in favor of just giving a blanket 0 ticket to every student. Not so much because of the economic issue, but because of the problems that it brings. I think it's like anything, if Jim hires me to mow his yard, and pays me $5, doing okay. But if I mow his yard for nothing because I'm a nice guy, I might cut a corner or 2, So I think, when you pay for something, there's an investment there. And, I think the cost of the ticket or the digital pass or whatever weeds out at least some potential problems. So just something to think about.
Yeah, may I respond to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thank you. You, it's like you were sitting in on our planning meetings. We talk about this very issue. one of the things a digital ticket allows you to do, I guess it works like this, you know, if you don't pay your electrical bill, your electricity gets cut off. We have the ability in the dashboard, if there's a student that did not earn the right to be at a particular game because of some behavior, then we actually can go on our dashboard and change their status, and when they try to check into a game, they would not be able to be scanned, they would be denied. So that's a really basic way, just there's some safeguards that address part of what you're talking about.
Last fall, I had the opportunity to accompany Jim to a game at Monterey Stadium, and you know, Ben McCormick, Clayton Krieger, right, along with Jim and then their staff, you know, really have a presence, you know, on the grounds, right? So to Jim's point, we have a digital ticket, right, which means, you know, Mr. John Hannawalt entered the game, right, along with Jim Millard and Carl Demmerhausen and Greg Ardrey, right? So we know those individuals came in, right? So if there is an issue, to Jim's point, right, we could always turn that off, right? And then the other thing, right, is we have a really extensive relationship with Janesville Police Department, right? So the volume of supervision, it's a controlled environment. This further enhances, right, while it's not the intent to be a security measure, right, there's residual benefit that we know exactly who is at our events.
Just briefly, I'm not against the digital ticket. I think that has a merit and a place for it. I'm just concerned about the expense to the child. And I know some children probably wouldn't spend the money, even if it's for the whole season, to do it. But if we did it, we could do it inexpensively. Not that this is expensive, but if you have nothing, it's expensive. And I know people that are that way, so I just want to encourage it, and the digital ticket I'm for, the money I'm a little bit against, so thank you.
Again, I understand, similar to, you know, the lunch program and other things, scholarship programs. To get the digital ticket, to piggyback on what Carl's saying, do you have to apply and show financial need along those lines? Because I agree with Carl, there are people, you know, and I guess part of it comes from having done, you know, the last part of the last few months, a lot of time at Wilson, which is our Forest District, Forest Elementary, and talking with some of the staff there and talking to the principal, that some people just won't even apply because, one, they don't want you to know, they don't want to. So that's where I'm concerned too, is that there's still going to potentially be a group out there that, unless they apply for the reduced rate or free rate, they still might not get that. Just food for thought. Just food for thought.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and, you know, you could put all the systems in place and communicate brilliantly about things, but for some of our kiddos, it's some grassroots efforts by all of us to communicate with those 3 kids that we really connect with, who we see or know may not have access, and so we need to go to that level, and we do go to that level. But yeah, largely we need to do a really good job of communicating. But I think we need to continue to do that, whether we're talking about athletic passes or just even getting access to register for a sport, and thinking about that athletic fee, which we're going to talk about. So, yeah, but very good point. It's not lost here at all.
2 more questions, and I'll be done with this one. In 2012-13, when we adjusted the athletic, nope, different issue. Get to that later. The GoFan platform, is there a cost to operate that? The digital ticketing platform?
Oh, I'm sorry, the digital, yeah, yes, so this digital ticketing platform that we are adopting is a conference. So just, forgive me, I'm just trying to pull up that data. So, uh, in the past, this current school year, in the past several school years across our conference, we have a point of sale price for tickets. It's $5 for adults, and it's $3 for students. And largely, that's a cash exchange, point of sale. So we've increased, as a conference, we've increased our fees to $6 for adults and $4 for students across all 10 schools of the conference, for the purpose of reacting to or being proactive with adopting GoFan. Essentially, the GoFan price is to purchase a $6 ticket. It's actually going to cost a school district it's going to cost $1 to buy that ticket. So it's essentially $1 for those types of exchanges. When we get to a season pass, it's extraordinarily less. It's one of the reasons why we would like to encourage people to do season passes. That $20 ends up being, I think, $2.50 or $3 for, in the school district takes 17 from that. So yes, that's the cost associated, which is extremely reasonable compared to some of the other organizations that we explored.
Thank you. So I would rather than having any recommendations across all of the fees, if we could handle them one at a time. Is there an appetite to make a recommendation to the full board or not on this?
Handle them one at a time.
No, we're going to handle them one at a time. I was just saying, is there an appetite to make a recommendation to the full board? We can let this go and not make a recommendation at all, and then it just becomes a point of item for the full board to discuss. Or, as a committee, we can move it to the full board with a recommendation.
What are we recommending
So
to
the-
the full board?
Yeah, so the proposal would be to lower the student pass fee from $30 to $20 for the upcoming year. Did I get that? For non-WIAA playoff events. So that would be the recommendation for this particular point of athletic fees.
We'll take a little bit of a bite on this, unless somebody else, go ahead, John.
I just had a question regarding the proposal. You know, the last line required that all students have a digital ticket to enter games. That takes into consideration what these gentlemen have said in terms of putting a system in place to help people that are economically challenged or whatever. Okay.
So a motion could include the proposal that is listed here for the 23-24 school year. So,
I'll defer to Carl.
I'm looking at this particular item.
that's bigger. Okay.
That's bigger?
So how about we do this? I move that we lower the fee, the student athletic pass fee, to $20 for students, which allows them access to all non-WIAA playoff events. Additionally, require that all students have a digital ticket to enter games. Is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
Okay. Now we're open for further discussion. John.
So we would be moving this to the full board, not hold any other discussion at this point.
And this would be our recommendation as a committee. That's how it would
Correct.
go. Now, it could be included as a consent item without discussion at the full board unless we wanted to do that. We don't often do that, but we could. Commissioner Millard.
So we're suggesting Is there, well, okay, here, I'll ask my question. So can the full board, change this $20 fee?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, okay.
This is just a recommendation.
So what we're working on is item 1.
Correct.
Okay,
And only item
understood, thank you. I was getting a little carried away there. And that, so, we also can pass it on without a recommendation.
we have a motion on the table that was seconded.
I know, that can always be altered, and that as such. I'm not comfortable with it, but, I'll go with the majority.
Greg, would and this might be a question better served over here, lowering the $20 fee, should that say lowering the fee to $20, should there be anything in there that's a sliding fee, or is that understood? Am I making this too complicated? You know, because, I understand we're saying it's a $20 fee, but there may be students that can only pay $10. Is there something else that kicks in that additional $10 so that there's still a $20, it's still considered a $20 fee? You understand what I'm asking? We're saying a $20 fee here, and then all of a sudden someone says, well, I don't pay $20, I only had to pay 10. So,
Yes, we haven't had that discussion particularly about this fee. I suppose we could do it. We have the flexibility to do that with other fees that we collect. And we're looking to whatever the fee is, we would align our process the same as we did for anything else we charged a fee for. There's a reduced rate, there's a free rate.
I'm just getting back to the point Carl made. I don't want to see any student potentially not have the opportunity to be able to go to these things or get this, digital ticket, whether they get, the scholarship or a free ticket or whatever, even though, because it's saying here, $20 fee, so. And I know how, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, we are absolutely aligned on that. It's the first thing in our conversation months ago when we started talking about this. That was actually the first thing that we all said about how do we give access to kids and how do we make sure that the dollar amount is not a barrier. So absolutely.
Tweak my motion a little bit and hopefully you second it. As opposed to, and I do believe I used the language lower. So if we eliminate lower and just say, removing to set the student athletic pass fee up to a $20 amount, which allows them and then continue on. So that allows the necessary for it to be whatever it is up to $20. So that would take care of managing that without having to come back to us.
Before I second it, does that make sense?
Respectfully, like we're really deep into the weeds in terms of how we structure a fee and when we start to use the term sliding scale, right? Because our fees are either the fee, an explicit free or reduced fee, right, or zero, right? So those are kind of the three levels because we're not arbitrary to say, well, the Hannawall family can pay $3 and the Ardrey family can pay $15 and so on and so forth, right? So essentially, I believe the principals, right, and the athletic directors have the ability to waive the fee, right? So, or to apply the reduced fee, to which then that may even be waived pending circumstances in an application, a request by the family, right? So I know this is really granular, but when we use Infinite Campus fee management software, right, we need to kind of provide parameters, right, that are consistent, right? So it's either waived, reduced, or full. If that makes sense, right? I'm just trying to avoid Parker says, well, it's 7. Craig says, well, it's not, right? It's not, we really don't want it to be arbitrary. We want it to be either waived, which in itself may be arbitrary, reduced, or the full fee. That would be the request from me.
So I will leave my motion as it is. It seems arbitrary how they waive or reduce, so it's already up to anyway, so. Commissioner Chalmers, house.
To move on, because we got a lot more, I would like to make a recommendation or a movement that we take a compromise. The compromise would be $10, and I'd like to amend the motion to $10. It's some, but not a lot. Having to go in and ask for a reduction when you don't have a lot of money is very hard to do or embarrassing.
So
And that, I don't want 20, I want to amend it to $10.
So just to add a couple of drops of mud to the water here, right? It maybe we would suggest that the committee consider moving this particular topic 1 to the full board, and that allows the business office and the athletic department to perhaps better have a handle on exactly the volume we're talking about, because we talked about that data point earlier in the discussion, and then to bring back a more formal, should the committee choose to move the request forward without a dollar value to the board in June.
We have an amendment on, is there a second? It dies for lack of a second. So we have the motion for us to move to the full board, a $20 student pass. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
If we could do a hand raise, I think that would be probably more defined. So all those in favor, if you could raise your right hand. Representing aye. All those opposed. And that passes 3-1 to move to the full board with a recommendation. So. McLaury, if you want to continue with athletic passes or fees.
Thank you. Thank you. So moving on to number 2, now we're looking at the adult athletic passes, and we're looking at a model, we're branding it the Sports Fast Pass. And we've, the background is, over the past several years, our pass has been a $75 pass for up to 5 persons in a particular family. The past school year, we sold 217 of these passes for a net of a little over 16,000. Now, this particular one perhaps does have a financial component that is worth considering, but we go back to still, we want to know who is in our facilities. We want to be good stewards of our resources. We still want to provide a tremendous bargain for our community. And just like with our students, we want our athletic events at our high schools to be something that our community participates in as well. Again, we are moving forward with GoFan as a digital pass, like the other school districts are around us. We all have a little bit different approach to how we are doing season passes, though, within our communities. And so, one of the models that, the model that we landed on to bring forward for this conversation is in the idea of, the more tickets you purchase, the better price you get. And so, we have basically 5 models here of how we are considering doing our season pass, and And just to explain if you would go down to there's loyal, active, then there's the super pass. And basically, when somebody's buying this pass, they're actually buying 30 tickets. And checkout, when they do that electronically, is $90 at checkout. And then going to the other columns, it shows you what actually the value is for that ticket. It's a $3. It goes down to $3. The overall value though is $180. You're saving $90. And the idea is, well, if you were going to go to every Parker Craig football game, and you were going to go to every home girls basketball game at Craig and Parker, you might be a person that would purchase that pass. This pass would be able to be used at both Parker and Craig for an adult. So you're essentially doubling up on all the home events. Again, you can use it for either Parker or Craig. The other thing about it is, so you bought that super pass, and again, it's scans. So yes, you're bringing your 5 family members. Well, then when you come and check in that night, your barcode is getting scanned 5 times, and there's 5 punches or scans coming off of your ticket. So therefore, we know how many people are actually using it. The current way we do it is there's a hard copy ticket that people show up with, and they say, these 5 people are with me, here we go. And it's virtually impossible for us to track. And it's also hard for us to track on whether or not that pass gets passed on to somebody else. So trying to align ourselves with safety procedures of 2023, what's been used in professional, collegiate, at the state level for our own WIAA events. Again, trying to be better stewards of our resources, but still provide a bargain for folks who might have multiple kids. This pass is not a pass that we would align with necessarily with a policy where, hey, if you can't afford the pass, then we're going to give you a reduced rate. However, I will say this still, it is a practice of ours that we do everything we can to help families. And like I said, it's that grassroots effort. And so if we are in a situation where we could provide a pass to somebody digitally for a nominal fee or no fee at all, the thing we appreciate about it is when that family member comes to come to the gate to check into a game, the person scanning the ticket will have no idea whether that was a paid for or a comped pass or ticket for a particular game. So again, that's one of the things that was important to us as we're thinking about the demographic of some of our families having access. So again, a little different for us, digital model. We wanted to try to hit a price point that made sense for families, still giving them the best value possible. And we do expect, it's hard to tell exactly, but we do expect to be able to generate some new revenue from this as well. Doesn't change things at the gate. If somebody comes to the gate, they'd still be paying $6 as an adult for an event. And that would be the same thing if they, again, went to another Big 8 conference school.
Aren't you glad you put me on this committee? This may be unfair to you, Jim, but since you don't have the prior years here. 217 passes last year sold, family passes. Do you know the demographics for like how many the year before, a couple years before, 2-3 years before that?
I don't have that information, but I'm sure I can pull it together pretty quickly for you.
Or do you think this was average probably?
That actually, I think, based on what I recall from the conversation, that might be the high end.
So actually sold a few more. Okay, all right. You talked about the pass has a punch. You know, obviously it's not a hard ticket. You know, I come in with my family. I'm an active member. How do I know? I know you said that the system knows how many. I get there and it says you don't have enough. Yeah, or towards the end of the year, you know, I want to go down to the Parker Craig track meet, you know, and I've been to basketball games as well. how, am I gonna know as a ticket holder how many, or do I gotta kind of mentally keep that in my mind, or?
No, I would equate it to having a gas card. Every time, if you have $100 on your gas card, every time you fill up, you get a receipt and it says, you know, you have $5 left.
Yeah,
Um,
so it would show on my ticket how many I got?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
that's
you-
what I was
you-
wondering.
You as a user have your own dashboard.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And then, the last one is just, you know, pie in the sky thinking. And again, you know, you talked about not necessarily having a reduced rate for families, or people that could purchase the family pass. Is there a way that businesses, individuals, whatever, could purchase passes for people that don't have the ability to pass them? I'm thinking, I just recently saw a story about how this soup kitchen or restaurant in somewhere, it doesn't really matter, where I can go in and I can buy a lunch. But I can also buy a lunch and put a ticket on a wall for somebody else that doesn't have the money to come in and get a free lunch. Is there a way that that could be done?
Absolutely. Actually, this system is very user friendly for that. In fact, you know, an example, you buy the VIP. It doesn't matter what you buy. You buy the VIP, and you then actually, I can send you 5 scans, and you 5 scans, and you 5 scans, and now you're the owners of those scans. or
Okay,
those
yeah,
tickets.
that's exactly
So
what,
that's-
without anybody saying, well, you know, I'm buying it for, you know, Greg, or I'm buying, you know, somebody, you know, the district then has the ability to say, we have a pot of passes that we can allow people need. Okay, good.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Real quickly, see if I understand this right. A person comes in and they buy a certain number of passes at the office here, I'm assuming.
No, they could do it electronically. They could do it from our website or through an email that's forced out to them.
Okay. So
They don't have to come in at all.
do their credit card or debit
Yes.
card or whatever,
Yes,
and they'll say, I want this many,
yes.
and then it's going to be, how do they get the ticket or the tickets or, you know,
Yes, so, with this particular program, you get the email. The email have your QR code, okay? And so it's a QR code that's, and within the QR code, you can use it, again, we wanted to set it up where, hey, you wanna use all 100 of them tonight, all 10 of them tonight? Or you wanna spread them out on events? But it's tracking how many are actually being used, but it's digital. In addition to that, we actually did this past year as well, when we were piloting this in the fall, was we had QR codes hanging on our fence, so when people were waiting in line to buy a ticket, they could actually just take a picture of the QR code, and their phone is populated with the site to purchase the ticket. So we actually saw that exercise where many people bypassed a long line where they were waiting to buy a cash ticket to be able to do it electronically. So it ends up being very user friendly. Nobody has to physically come in to be able to purchase a ticket. So that's another thing, we want to make it more efficient
you
for
do it
people
with
as
your
well.
cell phone?
Yes,
there
sir.
On the
Yeah.
fence or wall or whatever?
Yes, yeah, or your
Okay, and then
computer,
you
your
mark down
laptop.
how many you wanna purchase,
Mhm.
your information, and let it go.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So it's, I just happened to be in Lake Geneva yesterday, so it's just like the parking meters in Lake Geneva, you can take your phone, scan that little QRC, what is it, QR, whatever, the little box with the curly things, and pay, okay.
Do we want to make a motion for the adult athletic
Yeah.
sports fast pass?
I'll move that we accept, or we move to the full board the proposal for the 23-24 adult athletic pass, that all season passes are sold as digital fast passes and price points are established by the chart listed.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? Saying none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, Mr. McClory.
Thank you.
continued.
So we're going to turn our attention to participation fees, and these are for both high school and middle school. So number 3 is high school, number 4 is middle school. And, we took the opportunity this year to look at something that hasn't been addressed in about a decade. I think the last time was the 11-12 school year regarding athletic participation fees. And so our exercise was basically, again, looking at the overall big picture and then doing some comparables to some other districts, and looking for an opportunity to grow and align with our mission and some of the things that we're continuing to add. So we knew we needed to address the participation fee for high school, and so we need to keep moving forward on it. So an $80 fee is what we landed on, a $5 increase, which, if we base it on about the same number of students who paid full price for a fee across the 2 high schools, this could generate in the neighborhood of another $14,500 to $15,000. Again, we do realize we have students that fit into the category of full need or reduced need. And so, again, just looking at what our current structure is in that first column, and then the proposed structure that's highlighted in yellow. Again, hockey is one of those sports where it's extremely expensive to rent ice, and that largely is a reason why the fee is what it is. And golf is that situation as well. It's expensive to utilize golf courses. And so we felt very strongly that continuing to have a reasonable surcharge for those sports made sense. So we did our study with other schools, and we are well within in the ballpark of being reasonable. A couple of areas that we wanted to look hard at was the surcharges that we have some for some other sports. And so football was an opportunity that we felt we could eliminate a surcharge, and baseball, softball was another area we felt that we could reduce it. So those we're asking to have those reduced. We're having a slight increase in the surcharge for hockey and golf. And then we've adjusted again, the standard participation fee on 1A. We're asking for a slight increase in that.
Thank you. Appreciate you with your patience going through with us.
Absolutely.
These fees are adjustable based on needs. Okay, that's all I needed to know.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. And if you look at 1A would be, 1A would be one scenario. If a family's in a situation where they can take care of the entire fee, it'd be an $80 fee. If you're a situation that needs some help, so 1B, so we're asking, rather than it being an $80 fee, it'd be a $20. And if you absolutely need absolute help, we'll waive the fee, of course. Real similar to the conversation about the tickets.
How do you determine the reduced fee for
Yeah.
for participation?
Yeah, so how does a family identify that they are a family that has a reduced need?
That would ask for that.
Yeah,
You know, I think back when when we moved up here in '72, I have 3 brothers, one right after another. There were 4 of us in high school, middle school, all at the same time. That would have been $320 for us to step onto the field. And then let me go back. Is that participation fee, is that for the whole year?
per sport.
Okay, so those of us that were dual sport athletes, which were both myself and my three brothers, it would have been 160, so it'd be whatever, a lot.
Would have been, yeah, would have been a lot. Yeah.
How do you determine, so obviously the family must have to provide you some financial data, correct?
Yes, yes, there's some data that represents the need. I'll tell you this, one of the things that we are implementing, kind of going back to our grassroots conversation before, one of the things we're implementing, we're bringing back to both high schools is we're bringing back in-person athletic code meetings seasonally. So we have one coming up at each high school in the next week. And we feel it's important as athletic administrators to tell our story and to give access to families. And it's just sharing, hey, we understand people are going to be in this situation. Here's the steps and how you do it. Because again, I know not everybody's going to read every email and look at the website. And we also know there's for some families, is like you were saying, it's hard for some families to come forward. So we want to take advantage of the grassroots opportunity. So I think it's a combination of how well we communicate it on our website and everything we send out, but we want to make that in-person connection so people know. I can't think of an instance where anybody was denied if they gave a request. And in some cases, we knew enough that we needed to go and approach that family proactively to let them, again, remind them that we have this available and we'll take care of it.
How do you know that?
How do we know that?
At a grassroots level. Let me rephrase
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You know that if I'm coaching a little league team or if I'm coaching a YMCA team and I've got a couple of stellar athletes, but what about the families that are, participating for the sake of participating? They're not going to ever be scholarships. They're going to play their 3-4 years out. Maybe by junior, senior year they make the varsity, and or they don't, but they're still going out. And you're not going to have anyone. You're not going to have a coach, or even still a kid that's running cross country. We don't have a cross country. Well, I guess we do to some degree with the Phoenix program, but there's not really a cross country program. There's some sports that are not going to have an advocate out there saying, yeah, you got to get a hold of Joe Schmedley. This kid's going to be phenomenal. Yeah, that stuff has been going on for years since we moved up here. I understand it. Yeah, those kids, someone's going to step forward and say, I'll pay their athletic scholarship, or their athletic fee to get them over here or over there. But I'm talking about those kids that want to play for the sake of the love of the game, but they're going to be financially strapped, and they're not going to have that grassroots advocate saying, Parker, Craig, these people need help.
Yes. So I really appreciate that, and this is a good opportunity to talk about that. Our athletic department does not. Our athletic departments don't work in a vacuum. They don't work in a silo. It is very much a part of the culture of our school. So that means the great work that Ben McCormick and Clayton Krieger do, and Craig and Parker as athletic directors, building relationships with paraprofessionals, our teaching staff, our administrative support staff as well. I mean, there are several people coming around all of our kids, and they've made the message, really clear. Help us to get kids connected to everything and anything. And so, like I said, it doesn't happen by chance. It happens by choice. We've really been very intentional. And some of the data we've collected recently from our kids who don't participate hasn't necessarily indicated it was because of finances. There's a lot of other factors that prevent students from participating. We can't break down everyone, but we try to identify as many as we can, because we're on the same path as you're thinking. How do we remove every barrier for access?
So, the participation fee, it was by sport.
Yes.
Okay, alrighty. That's the only question I have.
I would move that the information on the high school athletic participation fee proposal for the 2023-24 $5 increase in some adjusted surcharges as listed in the chart be moved to the full board.
Motion and a second. Open for open for discussion. And I did forget one question. So if I'm a parent with multiple students that are participating in multiple sports, how do we work that really is what John was getting to. So if it's 3 or 4, is it now times 3 and then times how many other sports they're participating in?
That's the current structure, yes, yes. And again, we've always responded without, we've always responded when people asked for some help or some support or an adjustment, we've agreed to it.
Okay.
Almost every time we've agreed to it.
Sure. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously.
So our last piece is, we've spent the past several months looking at our middle school offerings, and so we're excited to make some adjustments and some additions with our next level planning for middle school. But by going through that exercise, it gave us a chance to look at what we do a little bit differently as a district compared to some other districts, and it also gave us an opportunity to relook at our fees for middle school. So we're a district that has 5 seasons for middle school, and so if you can imagine being an athletic director, and every 6 weeks, a season starts over again. It's a lot of time and effort put into getting kids plugged in, and so but we're delighted to do it. But as we started reflecting on actually how much we collect from our students in fees, it gave us a chance to pause. So what we currently do is this. We have 5 seasons. If you're a student athlete who's going to participate each season, we go through the process of registration, and you pay $30 every 6 weeks is what it comes down to. It's like installments being a member of a Y or something like that. We felt that it wasn't the dollar amount necessarily, but because we've had so many stops and starts to seasons, that actually didn't flow very easily for kids to be able to pay fees, for family to pay their fees on time. So we are working to streamline our registration process to be more to be one time at the beginning of the school year or when a student starts their first sport. And what we wanted to do with that is we wanted to align a new fee structure. So rather than $30 5 times, we suggested a one-time fee of $50. You pay that in August, and that's going to be your fee for the whole year. If you play one sport, then it's $50. If you're playing 5 sports, then it ends up being $10 a sport. The other reason we're planning to do this is because we're bringing forth a plan that's going to implement some more opportunities for our 6th graders, especially in the first couple of seasons of the school year. And we realized we needed to have some fluidity of kids being able to participate from season to season or have an opportunity to participate within the season. So eliminating barriers for administration, administrative assistants, and families, one fee, one time, $50. It's a great bargain if you play one sport. It's an even better bargain if you play all 5 seasons. In addition to that, we're showing a 2A, what would a reduced fee look like, a family in that situation. And of course, we would completely eliminate the fee if it's a free and reduced. We wouldn't have any fee at all. We still do have golf in our middle school, and so we wanted to be in alignment with what we're doing for the high school and make an adjustment to that. There would not be a need for a football surcharge moving forward. And again, you saw that we removed softball and football surcharges for the high school as well. So our first go at what does this look like financially compared to the model of 30, and we didn't see there being a significant difference in what we would be collecting. Again, keeping in mind there's actually several families we do not collect fees from at all in our middle schools.
I make a motion to send this to the full board.
open for discussion.
Did you get a second, Carl?
Yep.
Okay. Question? Yeah, I think this is great. I have a seventh grade granddaughter who has jumped into everything under the sun, and all I hear from my son is, God, every 6 weeks I'm paying 30 bucks. You know, so I think especially given the middle school season, and the introduction to the sport, so to speak, in terms of, because I mean, she's out for swim, or was out for swim, and went out for tennis, and I'm like, okay, you know, but had fun. It was great seeing her do that, you know, and I think this is a great idea, especially considering, you know, at the middle school, you got kids that are just, well, and I have a son that actually works at a middle school, and the number of kids that come out for wrestling, and then after a short period of time are like, I don't want to do this. So I think this is a great proposal, you know, for the middle school.
Thank you.
Is it proper to have football listed?
Well, just the fact that we would be removing that fee, that's just why it's listed here, just to be transparent.
So we're having middle school football?
Oh, I understand your question. I see, yes. Yes, I see.
So I would suggest as it moves to the full board, we just eliminate the 3B line altogether, since we wouldn't have middle school football. Because that implies that we do, it just wouldn't be a surcharge for it, so.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
So you're amending it?
No, I'm suggesting as it's presented. Because, I mean, 0 is still 0, just not listed at all.
Thanks.
So, yeah. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Well, that passed unanimously. Whew. Probably thought that was gonna go a lot quicker. That we will always be. Okay, next, 1.8, presentation of the 23-24 paid student lunch prices. Mr.
Good evening,
McCray.
Commissioners. So Liz Liedl, our Director of Student Nutrition, and I are going to tag team this. I'm just going to set the stage a little bit prior to Liz reviewing the memo that was provided as part of your packet. Just real quick, the School District of Janesville does participate in the United States Department of Agricultural school lunch program, in particularly breakfast, lunch, snack, and the summer meal program. So we're very actively engaged in that USDA offerings. If we look back to January 2023, 55.53% of participating students were eligible for either free or reduced meal pricing. Right, so sometimes this is a moving target. This target is based upon our second Friday count. Keep in mind when we look at our elementary programs, 70% of our elementaries, if you will, are community eligibility programs, meaning there is no cost for breakfast nor for lunch. So we receive that reimbursement for those meals from the USDA. We do have some non-CEP participation and Liz will review and it's actually in the memo at those schools. We have 60% participation. Let me requalify. Sorry, it's long into the evening here. If we go up to community eligibility program participation, 70% of the students at those schools participate in our lunch program. If we go to non-CEP schools, 60% of those students at those schools participate in our program. If we look at the middle schools, it's very similar, right? 70% of students participate in the community eligibility schools, and then Marshall is the only non-CEP school where we have 60% lunch participation, right? So essentially 40% are brown bagging it. Yes, sir.
Just want to make sure I understand. When you're saying 70%, it doesn't matter, but any of the 70, 60, 70, that's of the 55.5, correct?
Nope, that's the total student population. It's just about participation in this national school lunch program.
Okay, I guess I'm not understanding. In the first one says that we have 55.53% of students that are eligible.
That's just an overall district correct
Right.
value.
And then we have 70,
Right. So think of it as eligibility versus participating. So who's going through the lunch line? 70% of the students, 60% of the students are going through the lunch line.
it has nothing to do with whether they're eligible.
It has nothing to do whether they're eligible or not.
Now I understand.
Yep. Sorry. And I probably could have been clearer on that, so my apologies. And then high school participation, regardless of whether or not you qualify for free reduced lunch, is between 30 and 50% throughout the year. As we move into the springtime, we're really starting to see that downward curve. Right? So ideally, we want our participation to be much higher.
Mr. McCray, if I could ask.
Yes, sir.
What drives that downward in the springtime?
Weather, so essentially second semester sophomores and above are eligible for open campus at both Janesville Craig and Janesville Parker, right? So you just see perhaps relationships are developing through the year. There's more groups, there's more students individually that are just leaving our campus to seek a food option outside of our four walls.
Thank you.
It's probably going to be a topic that we'll look to further research and address. So just real quick, Fund 50 is a self-sustaining fund sometimes, right? And Commissioner Hannawall, sometimes what we do with the Finance Committee is just remind the committee, as well as just talk about some facts, if you will, relative to school finance. Fund 50 is a self-sustaining fund. So we do not levy for Fund 50 operations, right? So it has nothing to do with the local tax bill, right? And even as I say that, when we go a little bit further down to the next line, Fund 50 does not pay for their own utilities. Fund 50 does not pay for any support services, whether that's custodial, maintenance, right? So there is some element of Fund 10 paying for our Fund 50 food service operations, right? So one could argue, well, you are levying for that, but the meal that is placed on the tray, right, is not levied for. We went back and looked, right, at essentially a Skyward report as far back as 2010-11, right, in terms of the dark blue represents revenue, the light blue represents our expenditures for Fund 50 over time, right? So we're starting to see our expenses creep up. If you look at the 21-22 fiscal year, you will see our revenues outpace our expenses significantly. And during the 21-22 year, right, no students outside of a la carte paid for their breakfast or lunch meals in the district. All of those meals were federally reimbursed. So we saw a significant increase in revenue based, if you will, on relatively the same level of expenses. Right now, expenses are going up, right, but from a ratio standpoint. Yes?
So that's why we would want more of the high school students staying there during the lunch, because we would get the money if they participated?
That's correct, right? So yes,
Okay.
I mean, not the topic for today's discussion, but looking forward, you're spot on, right?
Okay.
So there's no recommendation,
No.
right? But certainly the more people, whether you're kindergarten or through 12th grade, participating in our breakfast, a majority of which are community eligible, so they eat for free anyway, but certainly for our lunch programs, right, the better,
Because we get more revenue then.
because we get more revenue.
Okay.
Right, and so part of the memo that Liz will be reviewing with you, right, is we're seeing a decrease in revenue, we're seeing an increase in expenses, right? And so that's why we're looking, to cast forward here, right, at a modest price increase. Now, someone could say, well, hey, you just got a ton of money last year, right, from the federal government, right, that went into your fund balance. Why don't you go ahead and just use your fund balance to cover your operating cost? To which my flippant response would be is that's like buying groceries with your 401k money, right? That is not a good practice. So keep in mind that you can use fund balance for not for general operations, but for capital equipment and improvements, right? So when the student nutrition program needs a new walk-in freezer, we use fund balance to pay for that. When they need a new dish machine, we use fund balance to pay for that. So for those capital investments, not for operations. If Fund 50 moves into the red at the end of a fiscal year, even with a healthy fund balance, we cannot use that fund balance to close that deficit. We will use a Fund 10 transfer, so we will take from Fund 10 and apply that to balance the budget in Fund 50, again, even with a substantial fund balance, right? You cannot use, right, and this is a USDA requirement, your fund balance to cover a deficit within the program. You can use it for capital improvement, right, and capital equipment, but not for general operations. And the reason being is how is that fund balance accumulated? Because now that fund balance is covering both the cost of a free or reduced as well as a paid student lunch. And because we really can't tie that out, right, the federal government essentially says you may not use fund balance to pay for a deficit, operational deficit. Yes, sir.
So purchase of like an oven or a freezer, stuff like that is okay
Correct.
to use, but to put the hamburger and macaroni and stuff on the plate
Correct.
is a no.
Correct. So, and it gets really technical. I don't want to get as technical as we were during the ticket pricing, presentation. If let's say you are balanced, revenues equal expenditures, and you use fund balance to purchase an oven at $10,000, you technically had a deficit budget that fiscal year. But you used an appropriate source, your fund balance, for an appropriate capital expenditure, but yet you were negative at the end of the year. If you, in general operations, right, sell fewer meals and have the same amount of expenses, so your revenue or your expenses are outpacing your revenue, and you ran a $10,000 deficit, you will then have to go to Fund 10, and we will journal entry and move cash from Fund 10 to Fund 50 to bring that up to a zero balanced fiscal year end budget. So all we wanted to do is give a little quick primer. So again, welcome Commissioner Hannah-Wall to the Finance Committee. But sometimes there is misconception in terms of Fund 50 revenues, local taxes. There really are none, except for, again, some of the general operations such as utilities and other support services. So Liz has prepared an exceptional memo for your consideration. She's going to take you through that memo at a very high level. And then there's a board consideration for potential action at the end of Liz's presentation. Oh, one real quick. We had the opportunity a few weeks ago to tour Chris Medenwalt, our Director of Secondary Education at Parker High School, to see their student nutrition program and to have lunch. So it's a picture of Liz visiting with Chris. And in the background, right, because people are what makes the difference within our program, is you will see Ingrid Hoff, right? And I posted this on LinkedIn, right? And I made the reference that Ingrid is hustling, right? And this is Ingrid's constant motion, right? She's always, and it's lunch, right? So she's just hustling, right, to meet the needs of the students that she serves at Parker. So Ingrid and her team run a wonderful program. So just a little shout out there to Ingrid.
Hi, everyone. So as Dan mentioned, that we do participate in the USDA National Lunch Program. Operating under the National School Lunch Program allows us to provide a well-balanced, low-cost, or free lunch to each student during the school day. All students that attend an in-person building are able to have free breakfast. This school year, the district has 13 community-eligible schools, and that means that students that attend one of these buildings can enjoy lunch at no charge. Increasing student paid lunch price would affect families whose children attend Harrison, Kennedy, Monroe, and Van Buren Elementaries, as well as Marshall Middle School, Craig and Parker High Schools, and Rock University. The Student Nutrition Department has over 80 school year employees, plus 7 substitute employees, and because of their hard work and dedication, we are able to serve over 9,000 meals a day. Over 70% of the meals served in the month of October were to students that attended either a CEP school or qualified for free lunch, while 30% of the student meals served that month were to students with paid eligibility. The chart on page 1 of the memo lists current lunch pricing for neighboring districts in Rock County. As listed in red, on average, the district has a lower paid lunch price at all grade levels. The last time the School District of Janesville increased student lunch price was at the start of the 2014-2015 school year. Since 2014 and 2015, federal reimbursement for students' lunch has increased $1.37, or 31%. Belonging to the Wisnip Cooperative allows the Student Nutrition Department to leverage their buying power. But just as you've seen at home, we at the district have seen increase in food costs plus increase related to disposables and labor. The chart located on page 2 of the memo shows you a comparison of the top 5 entrees from March of 2022 to March of 2023. And we have seen those items increase in a cost of $62.97, or 17.14%. The USDA requires that all districts complete a paid lunch equity report to ensure federal reimbursement is not subsidizing local paid meals. USDA paid lunch equity price for the 23-24 school year suggests that price should be targeted at $3.56. The Wisconsin School Nutrition Team has recommended that all schools increase the student meal price by a minimum of 10 cents. At this time, it is the recommendation of the Student Nutrition Department that all paid student lunch price increase 25 cents for the 23-24 school year. Lastly, I would like to draw your attention to page 3 of the memo, paragraph 2, that states that the Keep Kids Fed Act provides an additional 40 cents reimbursement for all student lunches, and that is scheduled to end at June 30th of 2023. Are there any questions?
On page 1 on the chart, why are we, the Janesville district, why are we under average for the area, considering everybody else is having the same cost for food, and I don't understand that.
For whatever reason, we chose not to increase student paid prices. And I think partly that's because we were able to sustain and keep adding to our fund balance.
So the other district area or the other school areas have probably increased their costs for the meals where we have not for a while.
I think our meal cost overall, our products, we've improved products. We use a whole muscle chicken now versus the chopped and formed chicken patty. So we have improved our menu choices, but we've just been able to sustain.
Okay. Another question, since you brought up the chicken. When I looked on the second page for the top 5, and I was looking at the orange chicken, I was looking, okay, March of 22 compared, $62 for cheese pizza, or not for cheese, 72 slices of cheese pizza compared to 68. But then, you get to orange chicken, 112 versus to 149.
Mm-hmm.
When we start looking at entrees or things like that, I'm assuming there's somebody that says, we're not going to serve that anymore. That's cost prohibitive.
Absolutely. So what we do is we try to keep our main entrees under $1.50 per meal. So even though, let's say that slice of pizza might average out to just say 75 cents, but the orange chicken is a little higher, we try to balance under that $1.50. Orange chicken is one of our most popular days. We would probably have some students upset if we were to eliminate that item. Absolutely.
Making sure my math in my head's right here. So, well, let me ask it a different way. If the 40 cents was not going away as reimbursable, would we be recommending an increase of 25 cents?
So looking back previously when the district did increase prices 2 years prior to the 14-15 school year, they increased them by 15 cents each year. I think that if we asked, and you're more than welcome as a board to approve a 40 cents increase, but I think that could be costly for families.
I was saying if
Oh.
we weren't, if the 40 cents reimbursable amount, if it wasn't going away, would we still be asking for a 25 cents increase?
At this time, I would say no.
Okay.
I think that this year, we're probably gonna be at that level where we'll add a little bit to our fund balance, nowhere near the level that we added last year when we were universal free. But if that goes away, I think we would be at a deficit this year,
Okay.
if that was not there.
Okay. So I wanted to establish sort of why we were going up even the 25 cents.
Sure, I'm sorry.
And no reason to be. So then, and I guess I would say the rationale to not go to the 40 cents is just trying to make it manageable. And with the fund balance that we currently have at this point and increasing it 25 cents per meal, we would still be at a level balance overall, or would we be in a deficit? In other words, would Fund 10 have to then pay even more toward the food? I'm losing my words here. To this particular area.
We hope not. It's hard to see in the future. We don't know what our reimbursement rate from the federal government will be next year. We'll get that information around July 1st. But we always try to do our best to reduce cost and increase participation. And also we do sell a la carte. So that's another way that we can bring in more revenue.
Okay. Right. I see your hand, Commissioner Hannawalt.
Last page, it says that, the, National School Lunch that we may lose that? It says may. Is that a yes, that is definitely going away, or it's not?
As it states right now, that is definitely going to go away.
Okay, which kind of makes me think of, or at least tie into what Greg was saying. So we increased 25% this year. We lose the 40 cents. We'd be back next year then saying, okay, we lost an additional 15 cents?
We could.
Okay,
We could ask for another increase to paid student meals next year as
because
well.
of that loss of the 40 cents.
Yes, and that will depend also if we see our food cost continue to increase at such a high rate.
Then at the bottom, obviously discrepancy in terms of elementary, middle, high school in terms of the cost of what the meal is. Are the portion size different?
No, they're not, but we do have different options. Our high schools, they have a variety of options to choose from. There's probably 12 options a day. The fresh fruit that we give and fresh vegetables that we offer at our high school, they have more variety to choose from that leads to a higher cost.
Why? I guess I don't understand.
Sure.
I don't want to sound callous here.
No, that's okay.
But why are we giving the high school kids more choices? I know probably because they're pickier, but in terms of fresh fruit and stuff like that, as opposed to the elementary schools.
I think that we do that to help kind of try to drive up participation. I don't know that it's been effective,
Okay.
but that was the
Cause
point.
because I'm guessing when I look at, okay, at middle school, you're gonna pay $2.75, with the proposal, $2.75, high school, you're gonna pay a dime more. I'm thinking, okay, you know, why wouldn't we just make it, you know, $2.75 for both middle school and high school, or $3, you know, is there that much difference between, in terms of the amount they're eating, or waste, or?
We try to offer our high school students a higher quality product as well. So it's not necessarily that they're given a bigger portion size,
Yeah.
but it just, they tend to, their taste tends to grow, and change as they get older. So we'll offer things like, we have our My Way Cafe bar at the high schools now. And on that, we'll have like a burrito bowl option, where we'll have, let's say, queso, pico de gallo, that kind of stuff, just to try and create an entree that they enjoy eating.
With that understanding of trying to keep them there and eat instead of leaving the campus too, so that we get a higher level of
Absolutely,
participation.
yeah. And
Okay.
with the National School Lunch Standard, it's still challenging to compete with outside competitors. We do have our calorie requirements, our sodium requirements, and our fat requirements that we have to stay within the week.
Thank you.
Yep.
Would the staff cost also be going up 25 cents? I know it's not shown here as a recommendation, but
Staff cost will increase, and that will kind of come out as we get closer to that July 1st. Typically, staff cost goes up 10 to 15 cents a year on average.
sure, yeah, okay.
Staff costs are not necessarily under the board's purview, but great question.
What do you mean?
So the board is charged with setting student meal prices, not adult meal prices. But it's a fair question in terms of, right, we're not running the program on the backs of the students, but we will continue, as we have in the past, not raise, but, you know, examine the possibility of increasing the adult meal prices.
Seems like in the past, maybe we did not vote on it, but it was definitely shared with the board, so.
Sure.
So somewhere after July, I guess, note that we will ask, what is the
Absolutely.
prices? And I guess one thing to note, and it was key looking at the averages with the district around us, we still would be below the average, even with the 25-cent increase.
And the districts around us could also choose to increase their student meal cost. We won't know that information until
Sure.
that was approved by their boards.
Yeah, well, even if they do, that just makes it.
Yeah,
that
it
much
extends
higher.
that percentage.
Okay. Let's see, do I have any more questions? I think I don't. I don't think we could get any more granular here unless we start talking about the makeup of the chicken itself, particular.
Egg prices are down though. Three necks.
Okay, is there a motion?
Pass it on.
Yep, to the full board for approval.
I'll do that.
Okay, motion by Carl,
I'll second.
second by John. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. Thanks, Liz. She was probably worried if we were gonna get into the fees like we did on. Sure, right, okay. Next, update on long-range facility master planning, Mr. McCray.
Yes, thank you very much. So this was a slide deck that we shared back, I think, in February of this year. And then there's versions that you can read that, just to really bring the committee up to speed. And we won't go through every. There we go. So just to bring the committee up to speed, and we won't read each slide deck, right? But back in February 2019, the board created, if you will, standards or goals in terms of what facilities would be. All right, but then we're kind of in talking about long-range facility planning. And before we do that, you know, we really kind of want to take a look at our 12 elementaries. In 1999 was the last time we constructed an elementary. In 1997 was the last time we constructed a middle school. We have 2 high schools improvements, 2008 and beyond. We have, of course, 1 charter school, 1 district office. But really, after we net out the 1880 Kimball building, right, the average age of our facilities are north of 61. I often reference Lincoln Elementary, where we still have original univentilator equipment below the windows in the wall that bring in fresh air and heat that air via the steam system boilers that we have in the buildings. So we have an aging infrastructure is really the essence and illustration of this slide. We know back in November 2022, there were 39 debt questions asking for millions and millions of dollars, essentially 170. There's a comma in there. There shouldn't be, but a significant amount of the questions were approved at an 82% approval rate. And essentially looking around the facilities referendum ends, there was a significant passage, right? Everywhere from Appleton, 130 million nearly, to Stoughton all the way at the end of the list at 48 million. La Crosse did fail. And what's interesting about the La Crosse story, right, is you have a lot of consolidation going on within that community, from 2 high schools to 1, right? So you have a lot of community pride. And that's not too dissimilar to the West Allis, West Milwaukee story, to where you have 2 schools moving to 1 at the secondary level at high school. That referendum also failed. La Crosse, similar to West Allis to Milwaukee, similar to Oshkosh, and similar to Janesville and a number of other districts throughout the state, have an aging infrastructure related to our facilities. If we look at approved debt referendums since 1995, you can see the Janesville community has supported $131 million in debt issuances related to its facilities, and that's a significant investment. However, if you look at my former district, Clinton, in that same period of time, that community has supported $47.5 million in debt issuance, right? So we're not necessarily keeping pace when you consider the size of the community. If we look at comparable districts, not just our area districts, right, you can see we rank in those polled right in the middle. Eau Claire has invested to date $276 million since 1995. Again, we've invested $131 million. If you look at Sheboygan, going back to Superintendent Holzman's old stomping grounds, right, $75 million. La Crosse, $80 million, but La Crosse had a significant question that failed most recently on their ballot to address, right? And then even Waukesha, if you are paying attention, which I'm sure you are to the news in Waukesha, right, from a facility standpoint, right, they're closing schools in Waukesha. That is not the intent of the School District of Janesville, right? So again, part of our facilities planning is looking to how do we continue to provide adequate educational facilities for our children. So again, how are we preparing for long-range facility planning? This has been a chart we've shared with the committee and the board before, right? So it goes all the way back and even predates, but let's go back to the Act 32 energy exemption back in 1718. All right, the community supported, right, a facilities referendum in 2020 related to secure pathways, as well as life safety systems and improvements in boilers at 6 locations. And Director Leader provided you with an update on that earlier in the meeting. We're also leveraging something that Tammy Carlson shared with you, right? Our ESSER funds for improving our facilities, right? Then we did recently, and the board heard a report on the capacity and utilization study, as well as a community growth or enrollment and planning study, right? So I think one of the fears we had, right, is are we going to, as a district, continue to see a downward trend in enrollment, right? Because that begins to pose other questions. The result of that study was we are not. So that's good. We're doing our homework in preparation for long-term facilities planning. Our next step, which brings us really to some time we spent today, is the facilities assessment, right? What's the MEP, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing condition of our facilities? We had an assessment done in 2016-17 for that, right? We need to continue to investigate that, but it's beyond that. It's about, if you will, the instructional space that our students are experiencing today. Our instructional space was built as far back as 1930s, right? If we walk into Adams Elementary as an example, right? Teaching is very different in the 1930s than it is today, right? So really looking at our facilities assessment and then working not only with an architectural and engineering firm, but also engaging the services of a construction management firm to assist in pricing, right, of potential solutions, right, that the community and the board would consider. So what we've really planned is the January through July, kind of the engagement, if you will, and understanding, I skipped. 2023 is the facilities assessment phase, which we're in. We have about 6 months remaining, maybe 7, right? And then moving into understanding and prioritizing off of that list, the community and the board, right, the engagement and scope of a potential project that the board may wish to present to voters in November 2024, which is also the same time we'll be looking for a renewal of our operational referendum. Right, so what we're doing administratively is just preparing and compiling information for the board and the community's consideration to address our long-range facilities master plan and how we can prepare to meet the needs of our students tomorrow and into the future. We did recently release an RFP for the facilities assessment piece, right? We had 2 respondents to that. And actually earlier in the day, we had a number of administrators, so Dave Leader, myself, Commissioner Superintendent Holtzman, as well as Directors Medenwalt and Director DeGraff. We included our athletic director and then Patrick Gasper as well. So just to interview the 2 firms. So we've not quite yet landed on that pinhead in terms of choosing one over the other, although we're very close. And then we would engage that firm to assist us with the assessment. The next 2 RFPs we would most likely release would be, again, the construction management services. JP Cullen has served in that role probably since the 1930s, right? But we still have to have an open process. And then Jim McLowry has been working with Point of Beginnings, just as kind of an initial walkthrough, but we would engage for those services to take a look at our outdoor athletic facilities as well from an assessment standpoint. Real quick, but I know it's getting late. Yeah, so we're getting close and it becomes a timing issue. So not that we're skipping the finance committee, right, because you're all members of the full board. But in June, you'll have recommendations in terms of any remaining funds at year end to deposit them into our Fund 73, which is our OPEB, Other Post-Employment Benefit Trust Fund. That's an action the board has done. We have an actuarially defined contribution, which we make every year. We're funding that within our expenses, but we the board may wish to add additional revenues to that Fund 73 for the OPEB, again, other post-employment benefit commitment that it's made to its retirees. There's also, and again, the wisdom of the board to create a Fund 46 in 2015. That's our long-term capital maintenance fund, kind of a sinking fund, if you will, and there would be a recommendation for year-end funds to put into that. So we'll bring both those items for the board's consideration in June.
Is it too early for any sort of projection? 10 million, 5 million, 2 million?
It will not be 10. it will not be 5.
Okay.
And it, so again, our annually defined contribution is just under 2.5 million. We're actually going through a revaluation of that. So we work with Key Benefit Solutions, an actuarial firm, to determine that we're on par pending our liability, right? So we do somewhat of a census of our staff. Again, the board has worked to reduce that liability over time, right, in terms of reducing the benefit level for retirees, but we still have a commitment to existing retirees as well as future retirees, and that's why we do the actuarial study. So that ADC, annually determined contribution, is 2.5. The value may come up a little bit more, and so the board has typically exceeded that 2.5 contribution. I think last year it was by $500,000. Right, and then we have our Fund 46. So our Fund 46 is pretty much driven by what Dave does not spend in the facilities budget to then feed Fund 46 as kind of a carryover, right? So my guess is there'll be an opportunity for an additional $500,000 for the ADC for our OPEB liability, right? I know I used acronyms, but I defined them earlier. And then we'll have a Fund 46 contribution as well. Keep in mind, we may also, right, put dollars towards our fund balance, right? So the board has a fund balance policy, right? What we're seeing though, right, before everyone thinks we've got $4 million or so left of a $130 million budget, and what are you doing with that $4 million? As we're getting better and better over time to where that dollar value is shrinking, right? So we still need an OPEB obligation, right? But in terms of contributing to fund balance and in terms of contributing to Fund 46, that window is shrinking because we're getting better. Keep in mind, right, is we're really working hard to align our resources, right, throughout the year to support the district's goals, right? So that's a little bit of a mind shift, if you will, over years past. And we're just getting better and better at that.
Any questions from you? All right, if we had a dashboard, it probably would be better yet, but that's a different conversation. Moving on, next item, budget update for 23-24.
Yeah, so I think we presented back in April, right, kind of an update in terms of where we're at. The administration is and continues to prepare for a preliminary budget in July. Staffing, which is 80% of our budget, has been pretty much solidified, right, but there are still a number of unknowns, and one of those unknowns is the state budget, right? So we received a School Administrator Alliance update today from Dee Patrick. She's essentially what John Forrester was in years past. John Forrester was the lobbyist for the School Administrator Alliance. Dee has assumed those duties. So she closely monitors and sends out updates to the WASBO, WASDA group, the business officials, the district administrators, and other groups that are a member of the School Administrator Alliance. Joint Finance is meeting now. It is not today taking a look at the education budget, right? So as it does so, right, so we're getting into that, and I have high hopes for the efficiency of those under the state dome in the majority, right, is to produce a state budget because they're efficient folks, right, prior to July 1, right? So again, we're looking at potential increases in revenue limit authority. Does not necessarily help the School District of Janesville. Our assumptions as part of our budget development was $100 this year, next year actually, in per student categorical aid, followed by another $100, as well as a 5% increase in students with disabilities or special education reimbursement, which is currently at 30%, right? And then there's still some other assumptions, but those I would say are the big ticket items that we built our budget on.
Just of note, I don't know if you guys see the email from WASB. Every Friday at noon, just about every Friday at noon, there's a kind of an update from the Capitol. So hopefully soon, when they are talking education, that'll provide some other insight also. Any questions for Mr. McCray on the budget update? Okay, thank you. next item is future committee items. Anything that we want to add to our agenda to address in upcoming meetings? I don't know if there's anything in particular anybody has. Well, if you do, you can get it to me, and Mr. McCray and I will work through that. So our next committee meeting. Not sure if the day after our next board meeting is available.
Flag Day.
Flag Day, June 15th, it's a Wednesday. 14th. Flag Day, I should know that.
The board meetings are available.
You said you'll be gone?
Yeah.
Okay. Birthday? We will get back and poll available dates, because our normal meeting, I am out of town, so I'm not available. And once we hit the 15th of June, I'm not available till July, so. Okay, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you for the patience. Yeah, that's just a couple of weeks.
Too soon.